Hi and welcome to Physiotutors podcast episode 73. Today we're joined by Philipp Andersson, a physical therapist and strength and conditioning coach leading the medical department for IFK Värnamo in Sweden's top football league. With experience in elite women's football and training high-profile clients, Philipp brings a wealth of knowledge on athlete care and performance. Welcome to the pod, Philipp.
Thank you very much.
Hey, to start with, Philipp, maybe you can share a brief overview of your journey in sports physiotherapy and S&C, and maybe also how you became the head of the medical department at IFK Värnamo.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually did what most people would advise you not to do. I actually went to physical therapy school because I wanted to work in professional sports. And clearly, when you got into the physical therapy school and you talk to a lot of people, you understand that a lot of people want these jobs and a lot of people want to work in sports. And for me, I didn't think it was enough sports medicine in the university, at least here in Sweden. So I started to do a lot of external courses, some from Physiotutors actually. And after, yeah, exactly. So like after a couple of years. After the second year, I actually started to work in the females' highest division and volunteered there for 1 year, and then I stayed there for 2 years, and then I actually got the opportunity to go to the men's highest league, and now I've been here for a couple of seasons. So yeah, that's basically how I got here.
Okay, and maybe as a follow-up question, like, did you have any connections there to get into those clubs? Because you mentioned a lot of people like those jobs and would like to work in those positions. Like, what was it that gave you the chance to kind of work in that sector or to enter those elite sports teams?
Yeah. Actually, I didn't have any connections at all. When I got the job in Umeå, which was for the female club, I actually just sent an email to them and talked about me, and I said that I could help them with some small stuff that they needed help with. So that's how I got in there. No payment, no nothing, and then it was actually through recommendations. Didn't have any connections in Värnamo either. So yeah, but it's definitely harder to get in than it is when you're here, because just like you say, it's all about connections and
definitely.
Yeah, you can imagine yourself. You work now with a team of 25 players. You have a coaching staff with 10 or 15 people, and everybody knows someone. They've been in different clubs. So if you do a good job, you have great opportunities to stay in the professional football. I would say, if you want to do it, of course.
Yeah. So now you're in a good position.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. And you said you worked for women's and now working for men's soccer. What would you say are unique challenges of working in a women's team and also in a professional men's soccer team compared to high-profile clients that you also work with? What is the difference?
The difference is more, I would say, football is one particular section, and when I work with other like celebrities and stuff, it's more about getting them in shape, and in football it's getting them to perform at the highest level, either if it's through performance training or if it's through rehab and then getting them back to performance. That, I would say, is the big difference. You can't just go to the gym and think about aesthetics. When it comes to athletes, you need to make sure that it transfers to game-like situations, and making sure that the work we put into the gym is to get better at football and not necessarily to improve in the gym. So that's what I would say is the biggest difference, and that's one of the big challenges in football, I think, with the sport-specific training, how you get the gym to actually be beneficial for the athlete in the sports, because I think it has turned a bit, but a couple of years ago it was almost like you just added a ball into the gym training, and you thought that was what you were supposed to do, and now it feels like most people understand that that's not really the case. But for everyone, it's not necessarily you get stronger in the gym. That doesn't matter that you get better at football or in any sport. So I think that's the key to finding a bridge there and see how we can utilize the gym to actually increase the performance on the pitch.
And so you said for the soccer job with the women's team first, you just wrote an email and applied for a job. How did you end up working with, the famous people, influencers in Sweden? How did that happen?
Yeah, so that was almost like the same actually. It's a bit the same world, and was one guy that needed help with training, and he knew an athlete, and then I got into that, and then through recommendations there as well, I've been working it up, and I don't have that many clients because it takes a lot of time to work with professional athletes and in a professional football club. But it's on that way. It's been going there also.
Okay. And looking at soccer again, what are the most common injuries you deal with, and how do you approach balancing performance with recovery timelines?
Yeah, perfect. So on answering your first question there with the most common injuries, this depends a little bit how you view it. If you look at like prevalence, there's definitely muscle injuries that are most common. But from a physio, let's say you have an ACL injury, since it's a very long rehab, it's actually a quite uncommon injury if you look at if you compare it to other injuries. But you work with it quite often because you have a rehab through almost a year with just one single player. So if you mean it like that, then you work a lot with ACL injuries as well or stuff like that. But most common, if you talk about frequency, is definitely hamstring injuries, I would say. But then also you have a lot of stuff that people might not think about when you have tendinopathies and, jumper's knee or Achilles pain. What doesn't necessarily take them out of the game, but you need to make sure you monitor the load and making sure that the pain is on a low enough level to make sure that they can perform at a high level. And that also goes in a bit to your other question. There's always a balancing there, how long you want to wait until you put them back into play and making sure that they're able to perform, but to shorten that timeline as much as possible. For me, the on-field rehab is a big key. And as soon as they can jog, I always make sure that they jog. And you have let's say you have an hamstring injuries. Often after 5-6 days, they can be on the pitch and doing very easy things, passes or short volleys with the physios, and making sure that they keep the technical stuff. I think that's very important for them to be able to perform when they get back to play.
Any differences in terms of injuries between the women's team and men's teams?
Yeah, so ACL is definitely more common in women's football. Men, more muscle injuries, more groin injuries. So you can clearly see some difference there. But I wouldn't say that there is injuries in women's football that doesn't happen in men's football or the other way around. More like how common they are. And ACLs for sure is more common in women, and muscle injuries, groin injuries, more common in men.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, and in a soccer team, there are many stakeholders. So you're working as a physio within a multidisciplinary team with coaches, doctors, other specialists. How do you ensure, on the one side, player performance, and on the other side, that health is also aligned?
Yeah. So I think it's very important that you make sure that everybody's heard. You need to always have open dialogue. You need to understand as the physio that it might not be solely your decision if a player is playing or not. You need to have an honest conversation with the coaching staff, and always also listen to them, because they might not have the medical background, but they also often have a lot of experience, and you learn a lot from it. Then you talk to the player, how do they feel, and you always need to make sure that everybody understands the risks, and then look at, okay, what are the rewards of playing a game like this, for example. And based on what the coaching staff says and what the player says, you need to make the smartest decision. But then you're usually, when you work in a professional sports team, you are more than one person involved. You have more physios or chiropractors, and then you have the player, the coaching staff. So making sure that everybody has an open dialogue, and that usually leads to the best decision.
Okay. And what is actually the role of a physio in a professional soccer team? Like my background, when I started my study in physiotherapy, I also thought I would end up, or maybe end up, in a professional soccer team, because I used to play soccer myself on a relatively high amateur level. And down the road, I had the opportunity to work, or to potentially work with 2 Bundesliga clubs, so in the German Bundesliga. But yeah, my perception was, or my idea still is a bit, that it is less glamorous than it might sound. It sounds really sexy, but the idea that I got a little bit is that maybe you end up as the massage therapist and the S&C guys are the ones doing the real rehab work. What's your experience?
I've heard several people say that it's not as glamorous as you thought it was, and maybe I'm the one that doesn't think. No, definitely not, because it's not glamorous. But I never thought of it as it's going to be glamorous. So if someone is thinking going into professional sports, they shouldn't be looking for something glamorous, because it sure isn't. In my specifically case, particular case, it's I haven't been a massage therapist. There's definitely been a lot of manual treatment involved, and we have massage therapists that does amazing work, but the physios needs to be prepared to do that type of work also. But at least for me, it's been the physical therapists that are in charge of the rehab. Then, sometimes you tell the strength conditioning coaches that, this is what I want you to work with on this player, and then they do it. So same thing there, sometimes they handle more in the late phase, the return to performance, return to sports. One thing that I feel has been worked very well is that the physical therapist is in charge in getting the player back to full training. And when the player is back to full training, the strength coach takes over a bit and makes sure that he gets back to performance levels. And then I usually the physios are usually very involved in the return to play decision along with the strength and conditioning. So there I would say it's 50-50.
Okay.
But overall, at least in Sweden, the physios handle the rehab.
Okay. And I just said some people perceive working in professional sports as glamorous. Do you have maybe 3 ideas of perceptions that people have about working in professional sports that turned out not to be true at all in your experience?
One of them would be that, you work less, because, they think it's one training per day or something like that. But that's definitely not the case. You have the training, then you have the rehab to do, then you have traveling. So you work more than 40 hours a week typically. Some people might think that the salaries are very, very good. I wouldn't say they're that good. In Sweden, it's a little bit higher maybe than the average physical therapy job, but it's not like you get paid like an athlete. It's far from it. And then, what can be the third one be? Maybe,
yeah, if you don't come up with 3, that's fine. I think those are 2 really good examples already.
Yeah, let's stay with those 2.
Yeah. I can remember like talking to people who worked for professional clubs, that they said you're basically married to the club, so you have to be available. A lot of hours that you'd rather not work, and also in the weekends, so that you really have to give up a lot of family time, and I think that is pretty taxing for some people. That, I mean, you can kind of expect it, but I'm not sure everyone knows that about working in professional sports.
Yeah, 100%. You're almost available 24/7. Players write to you evenings. They write to you during vacations, and they should, because we have coaching meeting with the staff in the morning, and you need to be prepared. And if something happens during the night, the players also want to be nice and let us know. So yeah, it's always on standby, and there's a lot of work when you don't work. So you get a text when you hang out with your family and stuff like that. So that's one thing you should really consider before going into the professional sports world.
Yeah. We covered a couple of maybe more negative points. What for you personally is maybe the most rewarding, or what are the most rewarding points when it comes to working with professional teams?
For sure, the connections that you get with the players, in a more normal physical therapy setting, you meet the patient maybe 4, 5, 6 times, depending on what's wrong with them. Some longer, of course, but here, I can truly say that there are some players and coaches that I work with that I truly consider great friends of mine, and that is very rewarding. And you also have so much fun. Football clubs locker room is tend to
Yep.
be very, very fun. It's nice people, and for sure the connection and the amount of fun you have at work. And for me, I've always loved football as well. So just being in that setting, I think is very, very nice. But if you want to go into a professional sport, I would say it's probably best for you if you like the sports that you're going to work in, because it's not like your normal physical job where you get a new patient every 30 minutes or every 60 minutes. You will be doing stuff that a physical therapies usually don't do. You have conversations with the coaches, and you talk about the length of the trainings, how big the spaces should be in certain exercises. Some trainings you might not have anything to do. You might have a full squad, everybody's ready to train, and then you just watch the training and be available if something happens, or you need to have conversations with some players or some coaches. And in those cases, you just watch the training, or I can help out help the material guys and pick up cones or whatever it might be. So if you don't like the sports, I don't think you're gonna like working in that particular sport.
Yeah, I fully agree. I can totally see that, and it's also something we tell people working in private practice. Like, if you see a lot of soccer players, for example, it would be good if you have good knowledge about the sport. At the moment, for example, I'm seeing quite a lot of tennis players. I play tennis myself. It's just way easier to connect if you know what they will have to do on the pitch or on the court if you play the sport yourself. So I think it makes you a better physio at the end as well. And
Absolutely.
I can also agree with what you said. I think the greatest part about soccer was the locker room, indeed, and I think that's what I still miss the most after quitting soccer.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. It's so true what you say. You need to have a big understanding of the game, and it's so important. We talked about earlier how to get them back to performance. You need to make sure that you work on the things that happen for them on the training pitch or in the playing pitch. And if you don't know it, then you for sure need to analyze it and find out.
And have you had players running to you after they scored a goal and you rehab them, like what the camera guys always show on TV?
Yeah, it was actually 1 week ago. We played a qualification game, and one player told me before the game that if I score today, I'm gonna run to you, and he scored. But our coach is always standing there, and he thought that he was running to him, so it ended up being those two. But I was supposed to be the one hugging him, so it's happened one time.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah. Hey, moving on to working with celebrities and influencers, how would you say does your work with them differ to the average patient? Is there a difference at all? Or do we just think those people are different?
We just think they are different. There's nothing, with them that is special at all. I work with some musicians and artists, and in those cases, you can say it's a bit more like football players. You need to analyze what they need, and you make a plan from that. But overall, most people, they just wants to be in shape, and if you're famous, if you're not, it's the same thing that needs to be done. You need to train hard, you need to eat well. So it's absolutely no difference from celebrities to other people.
No crazy attitudes or stories that you had to deal with, like I don't know, sorting M&Ms per collar, like for Mariah Carey. That's what.
No, nothing like that. Nothing like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. When it comes to being the head of the medical department, you also have a role as a leader. It's maybe a bit of a more difficult question, but what have you learned about leadership from that time as the head of a medical department?
I think it's very, very important to listen to everyone. Sometimes great tips come from the ones you don't think it's going to come from me. I heard, or I've learned a lot of rehab from coaching staff or from players that has been involved for a long time, and they've seen a lot of things. So I think just listening to everyone and making sure that that's what's going to make the best decisions. And there's a lot of people involved, and we have people from different backgrounds. With some comes from strength and conditioning, some are mental coaches, some are massage therapists and physical therapists. So just making sure that everybody feels that they can say what they believe is true, I think is very, very important. And then sometimes you have to say that you have different opinions, then you need to decide, okay, which direction are we going to go? And that's always one thing that's important. You can't make everyone happy all the time, and I think you need to be prepared for it. But as long as you're honest with everyone, there's usually no problem at all.
Yeah. And my next question, we touched a little bit on it. I mean, based on your background, you said you kind of, you sent an email and you got accepted more or less. So maybe you had a good profile, maybe it was a bit of luck. If you had to start all over, and if you had a friend who wanted to enter into the world of professional sports, what advice would you give to this person?
Yeah, so first of all, I think you should look for information from different directions, and try to get as knowledge as possible. I think that's number one, because like I said before, if you get in, there's a lot of connections there. But if you go in and you do a bad job, then it's the same. People are going to hear about it. So making sure you have the right knowledge and always trying to improve is very, very important. And it's also good for your resume. If a lot of people apply for these jobs, some things are going to make the difference. And I believe that if someone watches your resume and they see you taking 20 extra courses within sports physical therapy, you are more likely to get the job. It's not going to guarantee that you get the job, but you need to play the odds. And then I would start working voluntarily, just like I did, see if you can be around a professional team and help and do a good job there. And then you will have a lot of connections, but you might also be able to land a job in that team. So if someone really wants to work, I think there's a lot of things to do, but making sure that you're knowledgeable and try to get a foot in is the absolute most important steps.
Okay. I'm jumping a little bit back to rehab. What do you think is done differently in terms of, I mean, we talked about the part that you really have to work on return to sport and really work on the performance as well, what might not be so necessary for the average Joe who just, I don't know, wants to be able to go for a run once a week. But how do you think is the rehab approach different for patients in general in comparison to professional sports when it comes to, let's say, doing or basing your treatment on evidence? And I give you an example, so not to give you an answer already, but what we see, especially when we watch professional athletes and also the Olympics, for example, we see a lot of stuff that has less evidence, like taping and so on. Why do you think this is, and what's your experience?
Yeah. So first of all, I think it's very important that you never anti-evidence. You can't do opposite to what the evidence says, but these people this is their job, and they are professional athletes 24 hours a day. So if you see an athlete doing something that doesn't have strong evidence, which like a massage, for example, after a hamstring injury, let's say, but it's not like that's the only thing they do. They do the rehab, they do the strength training, they do the eccentric strength training, and they have a good progression into the training, and they have a progression into the games. And then they have the opportunity to get these things for free. So I think there's definitely more room to play with not so evidence-based treatments for these professional athletes, because as a physio, you're also hired by the club. And one of the reasons why I think it's very, very important to work with evidence when it comes to in a clinic, for example, is that people come there and they pay their own money, so they deserve the best treatment possible. But in these cases, it's a bit different. They do everything they possibly can to get 1% better. So if there's a possibility that something works for them, it might be worth it. But for the average person, it's really, really important that you focus on the things that really matters.
Yeah, it's good to hear that from you as well, because I think it's probably like 2 or 3 years ago now that we published an online course with Jan Lemeur on recovery. And Jan is working with Daniil Medvedev, so a professional tennis player, former number one. He's also working for AS Monaco in France. And I think some stuff that he mentioned also in the course, people said, yeah, but the evidence base is really thin on those treatments. And the answer from our side was always like, look, those guys, exactly like what you said, 1% can make the difference between Grand Slam title or losing first or second round. Yeah. And while you have half an hour with a patient, you just try to do what's best in that half an hour. But if you have every day with a patient and you have all the budget and the possibilities, then you're trying to make someone, or like do everything in your power to make them a little bit better and to be able to play maybe with a little bit less pain, or perform 1% better, like you mentioned. So it's good that you confirm that.
Yeah, exactly. And also, if you look at manual therapies, for example, what it's effective as, it's probably short term, and a lot of times that's actually what you're looking for with these athletes. Yeah. You might, when you do a massage, you're not really looking to get them better in 3 weeks. You're looking to get them better for this training. So, it might be more evidence based towards professional athletes actually.
Yeah, I fully agree. It's I think with general patients, probably long term is the main focus, and what you said, short term is way more important in professional sports. I'll give you another anecdote from my personal experience. I was always very skeptical of dry needling, and with tennis, you do kind of have some muscle overuse injuries, and that kind of converted me, because I myself also had competition on a weekend and I had some problems on a Thursday, so I would be like, let's go for dry needling, and it did help me play. And I do see those people now as well in my clinic where people want to be able to play on a weekend, and I'm trying to do everything that I can to help them be able to play pain-free or with less pain, even though I know in the long term it probably doesn't make a difference.
Exactly. And it's for these people, it's just as important. The upcoming game might be the most important game of the year. So obviously, in that particular case, we care more about the short term than the long term. And also, a lot of these things, at least it doesn't hurt the patient. So if an athlete come to me and say, "Can you put kinesio tape on me?" Even if I don't believe it works, it's not like I'm going to say no. You just do it, and if it helps that person, then I guess it helped, and the goal was achieved.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. What's one piece of advice or philosophy you always apply when working with your athletes or clients?
I think the most important thing is to actually, be very, listening to the patient, and always have honest conversation from the beginning. That's very, very important. And I think especially in sports, a lot of people, they hear another player, he got back after 2 weeks from a pretty serious muscle injury, and if you're honest from the beginning, you can set the stage there. But if you're trying to avoid it and say maybe, I think that is the worst thing you can do. So I would say honesty is the absolute number one thing. Even if that's working in a clinic, having a good dialogue with your patient is very important, no matter in what setting you work. And then knowledge, I think one thing that from a personal standpoint is very, very important. I think those two will get you farther than anything else.
Yeah. And looking at a regular day of yours or a regular week, how does that look like? How many hours do you work with or on the pitch or with the team? How many hours do you do with normal people, with celebrities? Tell us about how your daily life looks like.
Yeah, so I clearly work a lot. I get into the office in the football club around 8. Then at 8:45 we have a staff meeting, and here the responsibility of the physio is to talk about the players that are available for the game and or for the training, and you talk about which people need load management, which people, or you might talk about how the total amount of load from the team, how long should the training session be, well, what spaces should we use in the different exercises. And after that, we have treatments for the players. Then we go straight into a team meeting where the coaches talk about tactics and stuff like that. And we have training. Then we have lunch, and after that, there's usually rehab to do with some players, or you might need to do a training program or a rehab program for the next day. And on the evenings, usually home around 6, and that's where I work with the other clients. So I'm probably at the office around 10 hours a day with just the professional sports team. And then you have the travels at least every second week, which usually you stay 1 or 2 nights away. So there's usually just might not be as much work, but there's definitely time consuming, and you spend a lot of time at the hotel and in the bus and stuff like that. So it takes up a lot of time.
How much do you actually see from the cities that you visit? I don't know if your teams played internationally, but it always sounds great. But how much do you actually get to see of a city, for example?
Not much at all. It might be some time where if you go the day before and then you don't play until the evening, you might get a few hours, but you still have meetings, you have decided times when you should eat breakfast and lunch and snacks, and we have treatments for the players. So it's not like you get on a mini vacation. You work a lot, and there's a lot of you need to be at certain places a lot of the time. So no, not much at all. If I get a few hours, then I'm happy.
Yeah. So how much time do you still find for your private life?
Not as much as I'd like, maybe, but I try to get a workout in on an hour every day, and then I try to spend some time with my girlfriend, and that's it.
Yeah. Okay. I have I think 1 or 2 more questions before we slowly come towards the end. Now you made quite a career in soccer. If you had the choice to work in another field or in another professional team or in another or different professional sport, what would that be? If you could choose whatever you wanted.
Probably basketball. That's another sport that I really like. But for me, football has actually always been my favorite sport. I was a pretty good player myself. So my number one, I think, will always be football. But stuff like handball and basketball, I would still enjoy it, and could be fun sometime to get some other injuries and get more wrist and fingers maybe.
And how long do you think you're still going to be able, or you still want to practice in professional sports? Is there any plans for the future to do something else?
I think when it's time to get kids and stuff like that, I don't think it's optimal, at least for me. And I know a lot of people that manage it. It also depends on what club you're in. I know clubs that have 4 or 5 physios, then obviously you don't need to go on as much away games. They might just go with 1 or 2. So but for us, we have 2, and you're with on everything. So I think in some cases it might be better to be in a big club, actually. But yeah, a couple of more years, I will definitely be in professional sports.
Yeah, I can tell you from experience because Andreas and I both have small kids, so it's making stuff more difficult.
Yeah, for sure.
Trying to be home for supper in time, and like the long days at the office have become less, I have to say.
Yeah.
So yeah. Hey, and we always ask people at the end of the podcast: is there anything that we haven't discussed or touched on that you would like to add to the podcast that comes to mind?
One thing that I feel is very important is the risk reward with players. You see cases where you know that it might not be correct according to the science or ethically also. But I can give you an example. We had a player that he'd had very long-standing growing pain. It was my first year in IFK Värnamo, and the year before he missed quite a bit of it. He's from Brazil, so he gets a bit later into the preseason. And oftentimes with these injuries, it goes away when you rest. He didn't say anything when he got back. He thought it was good, and you start training, and it just gets progressively worse. So when we get to the summer, and it's very bad for him, and in these cases, he wants to take a cortisone injection, and none of us, me or the chiropractor or the team doctor, we all said it wasn't the best idea. But to take this player out and do a rehab, it would for sure been 12 weeks to actually get him the pain levels down, get strength back, have a progressive return to sport, and stuff like that. So it's easy to say that that's how you should do, but if you look at these people's, a lot of these players, especially when they come from Africa or South America, they don't really buy luxury things. They have a lot of people to take care of, and this guy is 28, 29 years old. He has an expiring contract, and he's out for the rest of the season. And in this case, you don't know, will he even get a professional contract? So it's hard. You sit there and you explain everything to them. These are the risks with taking a cortisone injection, and they sit and say, yeah, but for me in this particular situation, it is worth it. Yeah. And a lot of people that listen to this might say that it's wrong, but we actually ended up taking the injection. He played the entire fall season. He got a contract in Brazil after, and it worked out pretty fine. But these are the situations that you have to handle in every day, basically. And I think you need to look at all situations, individually, and trying to, once again, listen to the players and the external factors, because a lot of people might think that professional athletes, they just walk around and they buy luxury things, they buy cars, they buy watches. That's maybe 1% of the professional athletes. A lot of them, they just play to get another contract, being able to provide for their families, stuff like that. So yeah, that's one of those things. You need to look at all situations and see, okay, what is best in this situation. And once again, understand you are not the one always taking the decision. You're there to provide all the facts, talk about the risks, and talk about the rewards also. And in this particular case, we felt like getting this player a cortisone injection might actually be the best thing. He gets to play the entire fall season, play for a new contract, and yeah, luckily he got it.
Okay, yeah, very interesting story. Thanks for adding that. And it gave me a follow-up question. How important do you think is psychological readiness? Because I think it's a topic that is getting more and more attention now. And maybe from a physio standpoint, everything could be good and someone could be ready to go. But have you maybe experienced a case where a player felt like, hey, I don't feel ready, or I'm afraid?
Yeah, for sure. I've had it several times. And one thing, I think it's psychological readiness is one thing, but I also believe that is connected to what you have done, during the rehab. And I think you should look at that. Have we exposed this player to sprints and change direction, or can that be one of the reasons that he doesn't feel ready because he haven't done these things that he needs to do on the pitch? Or has he been in enough chaotic situations? But I definitely had situations where, if you look at the GPS data and everything we've done, we have worked on sprints and he still feel like he isn't ready. And then it's hard, you have to work on it even more. Every player is different, and you can't really force someone to play when they doesn't want to. So I think it's very, very important, and those cases happen, even though it might be more often the other way around, that people want to play before they are actually ready. But I see it for sure.
All right. Hey, Philipp, thank you so much for this interesting episode. And if people want to know more about you, where can they find you?
It's probably best to find me on Twitter at Philipp Andersson with a PH.
And a double S, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Philipp, thank you so much for your time and for your insights. It was a pleasure to have you on a podcast. And also, thanks a lot for everyone listening to this episode, and to listen to this and other episodes in your own language, including German, French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and Dutch. Download our new and free Physiotutors app, and additionally, you can access the transcript and infographic as a premium member and also find more useful physio content. And if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And also consider leaving a review if you really enjoyed it. And with that being said, this was Kai for Physiotutors. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.